What's up, everybody? My name is Key Air, and you are watching the important things that really matter. Today, we got a very interesting subject today. Well, most of my videos have very interesting subjects. But anyway, today we're going to talk about how to know if your woman is screwing around with other women. Once again, how to know if your woman is screwing around with other women. Very important subject. Now, before we get into it, would you please like, would you please share, and would you please subscribe, because I'm trying to get my channel to grow. Appreciate you greatly. And here we go. Anyway, very interesting subject. How to know if your woman is screwing around with other women. Very important. One of the things that you need to take into consideration, because this is an extremely important subject, one of the main reasons why it's an extremely important subject, because the rate of STDs, these transmitted diseases, are very high now. Matter of fact, one southern city in the United States has such a high rate of STDs, and it's not just this particular city. Many cities have a high rate of STDs, okay? One particular city's rate of STDs is so high that it is comparable to third world countries. Did you hear what I just said? This one particular southern city, STD rate is so high that it is very comparable to a third world country's rate of HIV and other transmitted diseases, okay? These are things that you got to take into very extreme consideration when you were dating or with somebody, because this can affect you so much so that it can literally be a matter of life and death if you don't take it seriously. There are people right now walking around with HIV, and they've been walking around for years with HIV because now they have medicines that will prolong your life. And you will be surprised who has HIV or full-blown AIDS. You will be surprised. I know a woman right now, she has HIV. She's been taking medication for years. She probably doesn't know that I know, but somebody who was very close to her had told me. And she's been taking medication for years. And knowing her background and her history, she probably not telling anybody that she's dating or screwing around with that she has HIV, because she's taking medication for it. So anyway, this is how serious it is. A lot of people not going to tell you if they have HIV or they got herpes or any other STDs. They're not going to tell you. So, and this person who I know is actually a professional person. Do you hear me? Professional. You'll look at her, you never would even think that this person's got HIV, okay? So don't just think the people that may have HIV are those people who live in the ghetto and they're hood rats or anything like that. No, there are professionals with HIV and some people with full-blown AIDS. So this is how important this subject is. So anyway, what are some of the things that you can tell or look for, or the signs that you can look for to tell if your woman is screwing around with other women? One very important sign that you can tell that they may be doing this, red flag, is, are they staring at other women's breasts? Are they is your woman literally going into a trance staring at another woman's breasts, like she wants to suck on that woman's breast that she's looking at, okay? Is this woman that you're seeing, are you catching her do this a lot? Are you catching her staring at other women's behinds? Or have you caught her going to a trance staring in between another woman's legs? You know what I mean? Let me give you an example. There was a woman that I was actually thinking about marrying. I was very serious about marrying her, and her and I, we were going to go voting. And she was standing in line. While she was standing in line, there was a woman across from us that had a big winter coat on. And she took the winter coat off, and it was a long winter coat. When she took it off, you can tell the woman had a nice body. And so, yeah, I glanced, I was like, oh yeah, the lady's got a nice body. And I'm thinking just this myself. Anyway, the woman that I was with turned her head and started staring and staring and staring. I mean, staring like this. And I'm like, what is this? I turned around, I looked, I'm like, what is she staring at? Well, when I looked at her, she was staring at this woman, and she was staring at this woman in between her legs. So I'm like, all right, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna stare at her so that she finally realizes that I'm staring at her while she's staring at this other woman, looking in between this other woman's legs. And so I started staring at her while she's staring at this other woman. So I'm looking at her, I'm like trying to figure out, when is she gonna finally notice that I'm staring at her while she's staring at this other woman, looking between this other woman's legs. So I'm staring at her, I'm like, when is this woman gonna notice that I'm staring at her? So she finally, probably about 2 minutes later, she turns and looks at me, and I'm looking her right in her eyes. So I'm like, what are you staring at? I'm not staring at nothing. I said, you were staring at something. You were staring at that woman over there, looking at her body for the last 2 minutes. You didn't even know I was staring at you. No, I wasn't. Yeah, you were. You were staring in between, she was staring between the woman's legs. So that's red flag number one. Are you with somebody that is staring at another woman in between another woman's legs, or she's staring at another woman's breasts? And I'm talking about like staring like she wants to walk over there and suck on the woman's breasts, okay? Or is she staring at another woman's behind? I had a friend of mine, a female friend of mine, was in town. And so she called me. She's like, hey, why don't you come by and see me? We can talk. We hadn't talked in a while. So I was like, okay, fine. I'll be over there. Where you at? She's like, well, I'm over my cousin's. I was like, okay, cool. I'll be over there. So I drove over there, got in the house. She introduced me to her cousin. And I said, hey, girl, how you doing? I hadn't seen you in a while. So we were talking back and forth, conversing back and forth. So anyway, while I'm sitting over there, the woman's cousin, she had a nice shape. She had a real, and you couldn't help but to notice it, but the woman's cousin had a real nice shapely behind. And you couldn't help but to notice how shapely this woman's behind was, because I don't know how this woman was able to get into the skirt, but she squeezed into the skirt like I don't know what. The skirt was so tight on this woman who had this real shapely behind. Skirt was so tight on her, they looked like the seams were about to bust on that skirt. So her cousin we were sitting in the kitchen, and her cousin was walking past me. So I glanced and looked, because you can't help but to see how tight the skirt was on her. So I glanced and looked at her, and I turned back around and looked at my friend, and my friend, now this is her cousin, she went into a trance staring at her cousin's behind. So I'm sitting there looking at her. This is another woman. So I'm looking at this woman. I'm like, when is this woman going to notice that I'm staring at her cousin's behind? So I'm sitting here looking at her, and she's like this. And so I'm looking at her. I was like, okay, I'm going to sit here for a little bit until she finally notices that I'm looking at her staring at her cousin's behind. So she don't notice at all. So I just take my hand and start waving it in front of her face. Like, hey, wake up. Then she come out of it and looks at me. And I'm looking at her like, why are you staring at your cousin's butt? So basically, in a nutshell, it's extremely, extremely important for you to make a note of your woman is staring at other women's behinds. If your woman is staring at other women's breasts, is your woman staring between other women's legs? I mean, just like she's about to drool. This is the point that I'm making. This is extremely, extremely important, because with the fact there are so many STDs running around here nowadays, so many people running around here with HIV, and there's even people running around here with full-blown AIDS. These are things that you need to take into consideration. I had a friend of mine, a lady that I used to work for. I was talking to her one day. We were sitting down at a table, we were talking, and she was telling me about her niece. She said that her niece told her that all of her girlfriends have boyfriends. So I'm like, okay, what's wrong with that? She was like, well, her niece was telling her that all of her girlfriends have boyfriends, but they all have girlfriends too. So I'm like, okay, so all right, they all have girlfriends. No, she was like, no, you don't understand what I'm saying. She's like, she said her niece has all her girlfriends have boyfriends, but they all have girlfriends also. I said, you like women that they're screwing around with? She's like, yes. Every one of them had boyfriends, but every one of those girlfriends of hers screw around with other women. I'm like, wow, are you serious? She said, yeah, she told me this. So she told her also too that her girlfriends would go to the club. I'm like, okay, so what's unusual about going to the club? She said they'll go to a club like on a girls' night out type of thing. I'm like, okay, what's bad about that? She said her girlfriends, they'll be like, come on, girl, let's go in the restroom. I'm like, okay. So what do they do when they get in the restroom? She said 2 women will go into the restroom. They'll go into a stall. I'm like, are you serious? She's like, yeah, she's very serious. Now, you're probably thinking this is just any regular woman telling me this. This woman is a church lady talking about what her niece told her about her girlfriend. This is what they're doing. They all got boyfriends and they are doing this in a public restroom. You don't want to sit up here one day and you marry somebody that you don't know is bisexual. People should at least be honest with you to let you know that if you are planning on marrying somebody, they need to be honest with you to let you know that they're bisexual or they have lesbian tendencies and stuff along those particular lines. One of the biggest red flags is she staring at other women's breasts? Is she staring at other women's behinds? Is she staring in between other women's legs? Okay? All right, so come back for part 2. I will give you more signs, more red flags that you need to look at to be able to tell if your girlfriend or your wife is screwing around with other women. All right, please like, please share, please subscribe, and peace.